Hello, this is Think Big for Africa podcast. This is Ekene Banye, your host. Today, I have a gentleman in London. He's a Nigerian, a legal practitioner. He's the founder of Criminal Justice Advisory Group. Okay, his area of legal practice is in the family justice and criminal justice. His name is Babatunde Akinyanju. Tunde, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Ekene. Yes, I'm Akinyanju.
See, I was just going to ask you if I pronounce that your surname correctly. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
No, not at all. And feel free to call me Babs.
Okay,
all
Babs.
my friends too.
Yes. Yeah, Babs. Interestingly, we got together a few weeks ago for the first time. So tell my audience about you and what you do.
Right. Thank you. And thank you for having me on this show. Yeah. So as you said, I am a legal practitioner. I qualified in Nigeria. I was called to the bar in the late 80s. And then I came to the UK in 1989 and eventually requalified as a solicitor. And as you rightly said, I have been working in the field of criminal law practice and more recently in the family law sphere. So my day job essentially is really as a legal advisor. I work in family courts. I still have a very strong interest in Nigeria. I keep in touch with colleagues there and with developments in the law and politics and all that in Nigeria and also the wider African continent.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So like you said, you recently got involved in the family law practice. Okay. So
yes.
Now we know that, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe we as Africans, okay, do not really understand the children's law very well. And I've heard about so many incidents where African parents got penalized by the legal system. Okay, so what are the difficulties around these areas, and what do you think we should do to correct these anomalies?
Right. So when you talk about African families, I suppose you're talking about those of us who live in the UK.
Yes, yeah, in UK, yes.
In the UK, yes. No, it's a good question. And I think it stems from a clash of cultures.
Yeah.
I say that in terms of those of us of certain age who grew up in Africa and the way we are brought up for example, from my perspective, I grew up in the 70s, 60s and 70s, and where we are brought up is different from where we are now in the 2000s.
Yeah.
So we have come to the UK or to Europe, and we're raising our children, and we try and raise our children in the culture with the values that we were brought up, and especially going back, some time ago. Where that becomes difficult is, I think, not understanding partly the culture and the law that operates in the UK.
Yeah.
And it's very much focused on putting the child's welfare as being paramount, so that the child has a voice. Perhaps in Africa and Nigeria, we look at age as being very important, and the older you are, I think the more of a voice you have. So you're here, you're raising your child, and bear in mind your child goes to a school and mixes with his or her peers and so forth, and the way that child is taught is different from when the child comes home. So discipline, for example, you might want to discipline your child the way maybe you might have been disciplined when one was a child at home. The law is against really any form of physical chastisement, and by that I mean a form of smacking, and smacking hard. I mean, it's not saying do not smack, but any kind of, what I'll say, use of force, and that is used in anger. And because if you are smacking or hitting your child because you want to emphasize your annoyance, or to ensure that child behaves and so forth, that could work badly. The child might go to school and raise it as an issue, and then the school is obliged to act. Yeah. I must just say that the fact that a child says, "Oh, daddy beat me," or "mommy beat me," does not mean that social services just swoops in and takes your child away. There is a process, and sometimes it involves communication between the teacher and the parents, and maybe the teacher and social services.
Yes.
Yeah. So there have unfortunately been incidents where, and I must say sometimes that there is, when I talk about the culture clash, I've spoken probably from the African parent side. From those in officialdom, namely teachers and social services and so forth, sometimes there is also a lack of understanding maybe about Africans, and sometimes there's a perception. People have preconceived ideas. So there's that gap in communication, which means that things are immediately escalated. And, before you know it, it's got to a situation where nobody's talking to the other person, and it's become a full-blown investigation.
So, yeah, I don't know if our embassies do any cultural integration of our people, because if we get these investigations because of cultural clashes, okay, I don't know if you guys in the legal practice, in conjunction with our embassies, do anything to educate African parents here, because it's very, very important. And I think our embassies should be involved in this education. If it's something so serious that children of African parents can be taken away, so our embassy should do something about them. What's going on in that space?
A good point. That's a good point you raise. There has been involvement.
Okay.
And there are organizations such as CANUK, CANUK is the Central Association of Nigerians in the UK. And I have worked with CANUK. And in fact, that was then under the umbrella of another organization, British Nigeria Law Forum. And there have been a number of whether seminars, town hall meetings, and so forth, addressing issues like this. Another organization that I'm aware of, which is particularly active, is called AFRUCA, AFRUCA. Okay. And that stands for Africans Unite Against Child Abuse.
Okay.
And so there are these bodies, and we have, like you say, we have worked with the Nigeria High Commission and also independently. But I think it's a good point you raised, because you mentioned Africa, and it would be my interaction, my network, of course, I say, being of Nigerian origin, tends to be, you see, whether Nigeria High Commission and so forth. But I think it is important that we are able to interact with other African communities, because it's a common problem, not only Nigerian.
Yeah,
it's a common problem across the board, and how one can interact with other African communities, maybe through their embassies or so forth, would be a great idea. Incidentally, just as we are talking about children and families, I did actually run a webinar in December 2021.
Okay.
Which dealt with actually how parents who have separated, whether through divorce or whatever, how they can continue to co-parent their children, even though the adults are going through, very difficult times, and so forth, but how to ensure that they remain parents for the children, because of course the children are not part of the adult dispute. And so that event is available on YouTube.
Good.
But interestingly, one of my speakers was actually from Uganda.
Okay.
So she joined us from Uganda, and that was quite pleasing for me, because, like I say, I was bringing someone from so we had an African-wide perspective.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's a good point you just raised, because there are a lot of the divorce in the land. So, and unfortunately, parents do not understand that their children were not there when the papers for marriage was signed. They're not involved. Okay. Unfortunate. I don't know how we can get this particular issue addressed, because it happens a lot. It's a big deal. You guys, thank you that you held that webinar. Please, after this, I would like to get the link so that I can put it in the YouTube video of this podcast. Thank you. I talked about the Criminal Justice Advisory Group you formed. So why did you found that group?
Yes. So just to give some background, as I say, I have been, although I've been in the UK over 30 years, I have still very much involved in issues with Nigeria. And 2020, we witnessed the NSAS protests all over the country. And then how I will call it an incident, because there was a protests at the Lekki Gate toll gate expressway in October 2020. We've had some outcomes and some investigations, but for me, as an immediate aftermath of 20th of October 2020, I thought that the gap between government and the governed is so wide. The mistrusts, things that have happened over the years that boiled over to Lekki Gate, and of course not just in Lekki itself, but really the rest of the country, because there's kind of wanton destruction all over the place. And I thought, well, how can I begin to address this issue? And for me, we need to work with government, because the government, especially in a democratic society, we put people in power. And for us to achieve what we enjoy in the West, what we say, accountability, accessibility, transparency, and so forth, we have to engage with government in achieving those ideals. And for me, is how do we get to understand the whole process of law enforcement, of cases being in court, of people being sentenced, of prosecutions. So, for example, when we hear, for example, of rape cases, very horrible rape cases, how do these cases get beyond the headlines and the process of it getting into court? Or when maybe a big political figure you hear is arrested and so forth, what actually happens? So that was my inspiration for forming CJAG. And ordinarily, I have done kind of seminars in the past. And before, I would have gone to Nigeria and organized this seminar, maybe in Abuja or in Lagos or so forth and so forth. But then, because we're in the middle of a pandemic and so forth, I think it was the opportunity to be able to do it online. And that was my inspiration for forming that group. So CJAG, just by way of explanation, Criminal Justice Advisory Group. And what I do is to have seminars looking at various aspects of the criminal justice process. And I get experts from on the ground. So my speakers are, for example, lawyers who are based in Nigeria, and they talk about the process and how it works. And so it's like an information board, so that people get a better understanding of this process.
Wow. See, one thing about the protests that got me, the main reason why I left Nigeria was police harassment. I mean, for me, since I was 16 till a few months before I left Nigeria, I've gone to the police station maybe over 10 times. Just because I'm stopped on the road, I'm asked to bring something, I refuse. And I always end up in police station in Lagos. I've gone to police stations in Ikaja, in I mean, name it. Just because of that. Well, the good thing is that once you get there and you end up meeting the DPOs, they don't behave like the people who arrested you. They are nice, all that, and they all the time they let me go. But I spend hours or every time arguing with policemen on the road. And I've witnessed in a Ikorodu road, a policeman shoots somebody right in front of me without talking to him about it. Just pulled him down from the bike and he shot him right there. I was just there. So I've seen this incident. So when the protest happened, I was happy and then I was scared for them. Okay, for the youth. And what happened at the end was exactly why I was scared for them. You know, and the way the Lagos state government ended it last year was interesting. Was very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, to say the least, you know.
Yes.
So like you said, you organize seminars. So what do you want to get out of it? Out of these are the end points. What do you want this to evolve into, if any?
I suppose is the main protagonist, if I may call them that I would like to be actually listening to these seminars are those in charge, namely those in government, whether be it, like I say, the police officers, senior police officers, the commissioner or minister for police affairs, the legislators who sit in the National Assembly or House of Representatives. I would like to have them on the seminar, really in terms of being able to speak to the people, first of all, to explain what their role is in terms of this whole, I would even say justice, not just criminal justice, but justice arena, because it is part of their jobs. It is part of their roles. It's like, how are we able to, we need the police, we need law enforcement for security, but how are we able to have that balance that, as you say, somebody isn't shot, killed, murdered, just on the road with no justification, because if not, we cannot achieve the peace that we are all looking for. So it's for me, it's a small contribution, because sometimes it can seem overwhelming.
Mm.
But that is the end road for me in terms of how do we get to see government working. So I've started from one area because it's the area I'm most familiar with in terms of the justice sector, but it spills over to really the whole development agenda that we are working on. And you know, I know that your podcasts you deal with business people.
Everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and really, I want us as people, you know, not to try and see things in isolation, that government is different from business or so forth, because for us to have an effective business environment, for example, to attract investment, and so forth,
law is very important.
It's very important.
And that,
it's very important. Safety. And sometimes when we talk about investment, you know, as those of us in the diaspora, I think as of 2021, we sent $17 billion to Nigeria, and that is even a lot lower than what we've been sending in previous years. So I mean, the money we sent home matches what we make from the oil revenue, sometimes even higher. So we are actually investors in Nigeria. You know, we talk about investors and we say, oh yeah, from Europe, this place and so forth, China. But we are investors. And, you know, to be able to safely invest, yes, if I want to go and buy land in, like you say, whether in Lekki or in Ogun State or in Anambra State or whatever, or agricultural land, you know, I need to feel safe and you know, tell my family I'm going to be traveling on the expressway, and so forth. So all these things, you know, they're all like part of a jigsaw, and they all matter. So yes.
So see, like you said, to develop Africa, one of the main issue we need to resolve is law, security. See, if let's use a business investor, for us to maximize all these potentials of young people doing wonderful things and asking for investors. Investors would not come the way we need them to come until they know that the money they are putting in this country, if something goes wrong, the legal system is there to protect them and they can get their money back. Definitely. You see? So it's very important for investors. Also, very important for the people who live there to know that if one big man harasses me, take my land, do this, I can go to court and get justice. And that's one thing that we haven't been able to do. See, the person who has more resources, most times can delay the justice for years and years and years. See, I personally, I know people who have been arrested in courts because one person with power wants them arrested. I do know that. It's happening in our country.
It is.
I mean,
yes. And I'm even kind of almost lost for words, but it happens. I mean, you hear about, I was reading about a case that somebody appeared in court for defaming a governor for alleging or accusing that a governor had been involved in some kind of whether
Is that
corrupt
a
practice.
criminal case? It's not criminal.
It's not criminal.
But then they will arrest him and put him locked up.
It baffles me that that case has, one, got to court, and two, that the magistrate or someone has actually locked this person up.
Okay.
On the basis that, in fact, it's not, it's that I can't even remember the terminology used, but it's almost like insulting. You have insulted a governor, so you've insulted a very powerful man.
Okay.
And so forth. And as you say, it is just as if I know you've asked me about rule of law, and this is actually what the rule of law means.
Let's talk about that.
See? Yes. So what is rule of law? Rule of law means that we are all subject to the law. The lawmakers are the legislators, whether House of Rep, state, and so forth, federal. So whatever laws they make, and bear in mind, they are supposed to be representing us.
Exactly.
So whatever laws they make, they should be laws for our benefit. That's why they are there in the first place.
Yes.
Now, when these laws are made, it means everyone from the president to the a person selling groundnuts on the streets is subject to those laws.
Yes.
And in fact, that means, so that is essentially what the rule of law means. And it creates certainty, whether you are as an investor or you are whatever you're doing, like you say, you put your money in some project or whatever, and you know that if it goes wrong, you can go to court and say, look, this contract I have signed.
Yes.
And the contract might even be with the government. And you know that irrespective that you signed it with federal government or with Lagos state government or with Osun state government, you can go to court and the judge will hear the case and will determine it on the facts.
Yes.
And it won't determine it on, so that comes to that impartiality, and it comes to independence, that, the judge is not giving judgment because he or she has been threatened the night before, or somebody has passed an envelope to the person and so forth. It's on the merits of the case.
Wow.
So that is why you need an independent judiciary, because the judiciary is also part of that arm of government.
Yes.
So you need to be able to trust that system, that when you go in there, in court, you're going to get this justice according to the law by a competent person.
Yes.
And the judge, every judge, whether in the UK or in Nigeria or in Ghana or whatever, was a lawyer. You qualify as a lawyer first before you become a judge.
Yeah.
In some countries, you can train, you can go to like law school or judge school, and you actually qualify as a judge. But in our system, everyone has come, been a lawyer through the system. And in the UK, for example, to become, so to kind of from being a lawyer to being a judge, you apply, there's a vacancy, you apply, you go through a very rigorous system, tests and so forth, before you are appointed as a judge.
Yeah.
And of course, when you're a judge, you receive, you are well remunerated, you are well paid, and everything. And that helps, so that that when someone is trying to influence you with money and so forth, you're not in such a position that you think, oh, I'm almost forced to take the money, because with your earnings, you are able to meet your needs in terms of housing, in terms of maybe your children's education and so forth. So you are able to face that job and do it properly.
Yeah.
And also that you are competent. That means that, you have that, you're well versed in the law. So these are issues that in the wider context I've been addressing for quite a long time. And with CJAG, it's something, it's also, when you say my end game, that also what I'm looking at, in terms of that kind of competence and independence and so forth, so that, the rule of law works effectively for our benefit and development.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. One area I think we really need help in Nigeria for one. I don't know what is happening in other African countries. Is the number of people who are in prison for years and years and years. Their cases hasn't come up in court. They were just arrested. There are some, they haven't even pleaded. They just arrested, thrown in jail, and they stayed there for years and years. Late last year, a group of men were released after spending 15 years in court. They were arrested for crimes they claimed they didn't know anything about, but they had to go through the court system for 15 years. 15 years. I mean, I watched the interviews of one of them, who said he was arrested from his shop. He told his worker that, don't worry, I will come back in a few hours. I'll just go to the police station and clear this thing up, and I'll come back. 15 years. Okay, this happens a lot, and this is something we need to address. So you guys in the legal profession, you guys have to do it, okay? Because people like me, we don't know anything. We rely on you, okay? I don't know what is happening in our country, in our continent, but these things are very important if we actually want to develop. The legal system, law and order, is a big part of developing a continent. Yeah, I'm listening.
I couldn't agree with you more. And if I may say, a lot of the issues we are facing in terms of how the system runs is a legacy of the military era. Now, I can remember I was state council. That means I was I worked for the Federal Ministry of Justice.
Okay.
Soon after qualification. And so when I appeared in court, I was representing the government.
Okay.
Now, I can tell you that I hated going to court in Nigeria. One, because of the long hours. You sit down there, you're a junior lawyer, the senior advocates come in, they're heard first and so forth because your case is called and so forth. Sadly, that remains the case, as of today. But representing the state, representing the government, and then that was during the military era. And I can remember a case where, like I said, the contract, it was a private individual, and he'd had a contract with, a government body, and so forth. And we were in court, and the judge calls the case. Now I'm there as a lawyer. My client is
the federal government.
The federal government, and somebody from the particular department, but they did not turn up. The case is adjourned to another date. They did not turn up.
And that's what happens in our country.
That is what happens in our country. Now, so then you could say we are run by soldiers, and unfortunately, it was the power of the gun that spoke then. But we are in 2022, we have been this so-called democratic government, elected government since
over 20 years.
Over 20 years.
Yeah.
We cannot keep behaving as if we are still under this.
By the way, if I ask you,
yes,
to rate the legal system in Nigeria today compared to 1996, which do you think is better?
1996. Well, by that time I was over here.
Okay.
And I would I even have gone to Nigeria in 96? I think that was the time of Abacha.
Yeah.
Ironically, I think the lawyers were probably more, we had more activist lawyers then, if I may say so. I mean, when you think of the likes of, for example, Chief Gani Fawemi, and yes, and so many others, Dr. Lisa Agbakoba, and yes, he's still active in his practice. But the lengths they went through, and pushed back the Nigerian Bar Association was really like the only opposition to the military at that time.
They were real opposition then.
Yes.
Okay. Now, today, can you say they are right now?
I would say currently, the current NBA president, Lumide Apata, I would commend him. He's doing a good job.
Okay.
But it needs more than one person, and that is
what law firm does he?
He works. He's a commercial lawyer. He's a partner at Templars.
But, exactly.
Yes.
I had this one of his partners on my podcast. Yeah, he mentioned him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see. Mm-hmm. I see. Oh, right. That's interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes, but really, and I think that the point you raised about lawyers in general, we are a very privileged
group of people.
I mean, I think really for anyone who has gone through being able to higher education, that in this day and age has access to a smartphone, to the internet.
Yes.
As an African, I would say that we are extremely privileged, whether we are based in Africa or we are based abroad. We are extremely privileged. We have access to information that a lot of our counterparts do not have. And I think it behoves us to use that privilege responsibly. And for those of us who grew up through the system, like I say, I attended state schools in Nigeria.
Same here.
My education, university, I mean, only for a brief period did I have an education abroad, but most of my education was in Nigeria. So we have that privilege. Now, as a lawyer, you have access, first of all, to the courts. Yes, when you're there, you're defending your client's case, be it a business case, transaction, or property, or whatever. But even in society, and we need to speak up. Like I say, the judiciary come from the stable of lawyers.
Yes.
The legislative body, if you look at the National Assembly, how many lawyers are there? Our vice president is a lawyer.
Yeah.
I tell people my claim to fame is that he was my former lecturer.
Okay.
You look around the world. Who is it? Margaret Thatcher, Tony Blair, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and so forth in the world of politics. All came from law. So it's a very powerful position we have, and we need to speak truth to power. So we need to be able to challenge the government effectively. We don't, like say, whether stand outside National Assembly or at Lekki Gate and so forth, but we need to be able to use our power and influence to bring this development and not frustrate or encourage government to behave badly.
Yeah. Well,
yes.
The bottom line is this, like we said, if we really want to bring development to Africa, the legal system must work. There's no other way, because we cannot build a sustainable development if the legal system, which underpins that development, doesn't work. So that's the truth. So Babs, tell me, what's your advice to young Nigerians and Africans in terms of activities in the political system of their countries?
Yes. I was watching a documentary about President Barack Obama. I like watching documentaries and reading books. I'm actually reading his book as well. And one thing that
I have 1, 2, 3. I have 4. Have 3 of his books, including the last one, A Promised Land.
Yes.
And I do have all of them. Yeah.
Yes. But one thing that struck me about him was that he started by very much being a community leader. And that is one thing young people, and I actually mentor quite a number of young people. Yes, a lot of them are aspiring lawyers and so forth. But really any young person, and not necessarily, mostly Africans, but even any young person I come across. But I think for us Africans, for me, community, being involved in your community. And I had said earlier, if you are educated, you've had access to education, you have access to the internet, you are a powerful person. You might not realize it because you haven't got that job, or that you're after, or things might seem hard, but you are in a lot more privileged position than a lot of others. So giving in any form possible. It might be that you're going to your local school, for example, and I mean local school, the school down the road, and especially the school, the state-run school, where there are very few resources. If, for example, you are, you might want to offer, say you're good at maths or science, offer to run a class, to do a tutorial or something, or even if it's reading a book, encouraging students to read, and as you say, read about Obama, or read about some other people of interest. Or if I'm just thinking of other community activities, join an NGO, of which there are quite a number, but do your research, join an NGO, organize a webinar, or be involved in a webinar, and that way, and that's what I say to young people, especially in the UK, who are job hunting.
Yes.
In your CV, you need to have it there. That this is the voluntary work you do. So not that, oh yeah, I went to Oxford and I've got an MBA, BSc, everything, show what you can do, because you pick up skills from this community work. You pick up skills that in terms of whether it's public speaking, whether it's
organization,
writing a letter, yes, and so forth. And that I think is the way forward in terms of developing your community and also developing yourself. Professionally and also socially.
That's very, very good. And I will tell you, that is exactly, those kind of leaders are the ones I want to invite to this podcast, because I don't want to invite political leaders now. So I'm not looking at inviting a lot of bankers. I know quite a few, but I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at young people who are actually doing this kind of thing, and in the next few weeks, I will have a few of them on my podcast. I will have a young man who is doing something very, very interesting, Sunday Obanubi, in the next few weeks. And then I will have a young man who is teaching young kids in Lagos, Oshodi under bridge, how to play chess.
Yes. Yes.
So all these things are very important, and they gain a lot of skills, and we need to, more of our youths need to do these things, because we don't need to always wait for a big company to hire you. We have things to do in the community, and doing things that is needed in the community. That's exactly what is needed. And you can start it in a very small way. And then if you do it and you have more people wanting that service, then you can take it forward as a business.
Exactly.
See, so people, young people who want to start a business, many of them think they must have that big idea that will make $1 million in 1 year. No, start something small. Find something that people in your community need, provide a service, and if it grows, if more people want it, then you can make it a business. In terms of politics, that's what my guest Sunday Obanubi is going to talk about it, because he's doing a lot of advocacy in that space. So I will have him here in a few weeks. Yeah, but we're nearly at the end of our discussion. So this is what I ask my guests at the end. What is your vision for the legal system as a lawyer, the legal system of African countries in the next 20, 30 years time?
Wow. That's a long time, but it might seem a long time, but gosh, time does fly.
That's it.
But we've signed this treaty talking about Africa as a whole. We've signed this treaty called the African Continental
Trade Agreement. Yeah.
Agreement. That's right. And I think it's quite an opportunity for when we talk about development, when we talk about business opportunities, and so forth, to make it work. And even talking about young lawyers and so forth. I think there are opportunities there, but it's almost like a blank canvas, because we might have organizations like ECOWAS, and you can say, okay, yes, that's a form of a trade agreement, but how do we actually move these things, move it forward? And I think that is a great opportunity for lawyers in all parts of Africa to look at different aspects of trade, and also how you say one thing that's important is making the justice system work as well, and then trade will be effective.
Yeah.
So that, for me, I see is the future. Another thing, the legal system all over the world is going through so much transformation as a result of technology.
Yeah.
In fact, what is happening is that technology is far ahead, and we are trying to catch up. And it means, for example, with this blockchain technology that I'm still trying to get my head around. Yeah, because it means that a lot of the contracts, for example, that lawyers draft and so forth, the machine is doing it in very complex contracts. The machine is doing it in a very short space of time. So we need to be able to offer our services as the result of what is produced. We need to understand how that works. We need to understand cryptocurrency, for example.
That's one. I seem to get the gist of it, but I haven't. I don't see the value as a currency. The blockchain, I get, perfect, okay, but the cryptocurrency, I don't see it.
Well, yes, it's also yes, with all these things that are, virtual, so to speak, it's very difficult to understand, but it's there. And I know it's, and we need to have an understanding and be able to regulate it so that it works for
now
us.
you are using a language that the blockchain and cryptocurrency wants to eliminate, regulate.
Yes.
See, that's something you can do. You cannot do with this. And that's exactly one of the main reasons why it's available, to cut off the regulation.
Yes, and so there are challenges. What I suppose, going back to your primary question, the legal system. Well, I think for what we've talked about, rule of law, having effective government, and so forth. We can make it better, but a lot of work to be done. More collaboration between professionals intra-Africa, especially say with our colleagues in say Ghana, Sierra Leone. I'm just talking about West Africa, but even going ahead, Kenya, because we all share a common legal system, being ex-British colonies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And, the fact that we are using more of the internet these days, and, Zoom or Teams and so forth, creates that opportunity for interaction, because previously, if I wanted to interact with a Kenyan lawyer or somebody in Zimbabwe or South Africa, I think, maybe I have to go down there and introduce myself and so forth, with, of course, all the costs involved.
But you go on Zoom and then you talk.
Now you go on Zoom. So, this platform. So what we are doing now is I wouldn't even say it's the future, is the present.
It's present,
and with young people with their smartphones, it's learning to use this technology to their advantage, to their professional advantage. We've moved from the so-called 9-to-5 office-based, or let me get a job and then move up the ladder in 5 years' time, and maybe in 10 years' time I'll be a senior advocate, or I'll be or that. All that system is
obsolete.
It is obsolete. Yes. Yes. So that's my message for young lawyers.
Wow, Babs, thank you very much for coming to the Think Big for Africa podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure spending this time with you.
All right.
And I look forward to watching your or listening to your other podcasts. I do find them interesting.
Thank you.
Very good. Have a